Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewired to Inspire. This show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewired to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, you beautiful humans, and welcome back to my podcast. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am, as always, thrilled to be jumping on the mic with you today. And for today, we are going to be jumping into episode 52 of Rewired to Inspire. I also just want to preface that we are on episode 52 and we are embarking on 1 year of this journey. So next week will mark exactly a year since I began my podcast. And so this episode, knowing that it's number 52, knowing that it ebbed and flowed of when I was posting consistently, now going up to 2 episodes a week that have caught me up to finally being at 52 episodes coming up on my year anniversary is just surreal. And I just want to again say a big thank you, as always, for everybody who tunes in and listens and shares and just gives me any kind of feedback. I'm always just so blown away when I'm out and about and one of you tell me that you listen to my podcast. And I was actually out yard sailing yesterday with my mom, my grandmother, my partner, and we ran into someone who said that they listened to my podcast, and it just honestly blew me away because I just get so thrown off sometimes in knowing that this is my new reality, but just knowing in my heart how thankful I am and just how much that encourages me to keep going and to keep pushing out content. So thank you guys so much, as always, from the bottom of my heart. And I think that my passion of feeling inspired and feeling lit up really does dive into, or really correlates well with today's episode. And so today's episode is all going to be about Dwayne Johnson's quote, "You're not tired, you're uninspired." And so I like to wake up every single morning as best as possible and just fill my mind with speeches, positive speeches, motivational speeches, positive affirmations, whatever it is, reading myself affirmation cards, just listening to people's stories that have come from such low points in their life and have really excelled that and used those low points in their life to excel them towards their future and use that energy to give them momentum to take strides and leaps forward. And so my episode today is all about that. It's about feeling uninspired, but how we often think that we're tired, but it's actually just that we're uninspired. And so I really want to begin today's episode with asking you guys a question. And so I want you to ask yourself if you've ever been overwhelmed or just had a general feeling of blah in your life, or just like ugh, or feeling stuck, or like you have basically lost yourself and feeling like you want to do things, but that you have no motivation to do them. Right? And I often think of times that I was coming home from work and I just wanted to sit on the couch until it's time to go to bed and then wake up and do it all over again. And that typically happens when we're uninspired. And so if you answered yes to that question of just sometimes feeling overwhelmed or feeling blah or feeling stuck or feeling like you don't know which direction to turn, just know that that's completely normal. Know that the reason for that is because we're uninspired. You're feeling uninspired, and when we're uninspired, that can really just cause us to feel depleted and unknown of what's to come next. And so just knowing that it happens to all of us before we dive into today's content is something I want you to hold on to, because this is something that we all experience from time to time. It's something that will ebb and flow in our life. And when we lose our way, or we're unsure of what's to come next, or no idea which direction to embark on, just know that that often happens before something great happens, but it always, as always, comes down to our mindset. But in order for us to take action when we're feeling uninspired, or in order for us to begin to shift our life when we're feeling like we don't have any ideas or we're just feeling stuck, we really have to identify what's going on, right? And so oftentimes when we get those points in our life that we're feeling stuck or we're unsure, it comes down to asking ourselves questions. Getting honest with ourselves, figuring out when this started for us, why we're feeling this way, and just beginning to do the deeper work, because there's always a reason for what is going on in your life. There's always a reason why we feel the way that we feel. And so I just want to begin with identifying some signs that you might be feeling uninspired, because you might not even realize that you're uninspired, because you might have just been going through the motions of day to day for the last X amount of time. You might just be so stuck in your routine and in your habits and in things that you don't even potentially realize that you're uninspired. And we can be doing things that we love, but also still have spurts of feeling uninspired. There's moments of doing this podcast where I have genuinely no idea what to talk about. And that doesn't mean that I don't love what I do with all of my heart, but there's just times when we feel uninspired, and it's about bringing awareness to why that might be, why we're having creative blocks, why we're feeling stuck, why we're feeling like we don't know which way to go. And so some signs that you're feeling uninspired, the first one is pretty obvious, and that's that you're bored. And I often think of this as like the example I use, coming home from work, changing whatever it is, and then just feeling like you don't know what to do with yourself. And that's such a frustrating feeling when you're feeling bored and you just don't know what to do with yourself. And that is such a high feeling of feeling uninspired, when you genuinely just don't know what to do with yourself, right? You come home, you sit on the couch and you're like, should I watch TV? Should I go to the gym? Should I cook? Should I clean? Should I just hang out? Like what should I do? And that's often because we're feeling uninspired. And the second sign you might be feeling uninspired is that you put things off. You put things off till later, right? I'll go to the gym later. I'll record that podcast later. I'll post that thing on social media later. I'll call that business potential client later, right? We push everything off. And the thing is if we're feeling inspired and excited and driven to do something, we likely won't put it off, because we put things off because we're pushing it away from doing it in the now. And the only time that we really do that is when we're feeling uninspired. And yes, there are times when we want to push things away because we simply don't want to do them. But when we know in our mind that when we'll feel better when we do them, or we're excited about it, or faking it till we make it, we're often able to get through it. But if you're constantly just putting things off or pushing them to the back burner, it's often a pretty large indicator that you're feeling uninspired or that you're feeling stuck. The third reason or sign that you might be feeling uninspired is that you can't seem to concentrate. And I noticed that this used to happen to me all the time when I was in college in certain classes. Certain classes I was excelling in, I was doing great in, and other classes I just wasn't. And that's because I was uninspired, and so I couldn't concentrate. And so when something doesn't spark joy for us, or something doesn't feel in alignment or excite us, it can cause us to just kind of drift away, right? Our mind starts to just go somewhere else. And that often happens when we're uninspired, but outside of the college example, that can really begin to happen in our own personal lives. That can begin to happen in our businesses. That can begin to happen in our jobs, or whatever that looks like for you. When we're having a hard time concentrating on something, it's often because we're uninspired. And so even think of reading a book. If a book hasn't grabbed your attention or hasn't excited you, you're often going to just kind of be skimming through the pages, skimming through the words, not really knowing what it says, not really holding on to what the message is. And that's because maybe the book is uninspiring to you, right? And so I think that uninspiring happens when there's no part of us that's lit up. When there's no part of us that's lit up, we don't want to take action, because why would we take action if we don't get a reward? Because at the end of the day, that really is how we're wired. We're wired to do an action to seek a reward, not vice versa. But when we're not getting that reward, in this analogy, feeling inspired, we're not going to take action. And so that is my next point of that you're feeling uninspired, is that you don't feel any joy or happiness. Because if something doesn't spark joy or happiness, that's a pretty large indicator that you're feeling uninspired, or that something is not in alignment. The next sign is that you have a hard time making simple decisions. So that would be like, do I do this or do I do that? Do I go do this or do I go do that? Right? When we're feeling uninspired, it's really easy for us to have a hard time with time management, having a hard time knowing what to do next, because none of them really sound appealing. I can think of some jobs I've had in the past where I walk in and I have a list of things to do, and I really don't want to do any of them, so I just kind of pick one and go for it, and I don't really know which one to do. But that's because it's not exciting. It's because I don't want, quote unquote, to do it, and so therefore I'm uninspired. The next sign is that you have no spark, right? So as I just mentioned, you have nothing lit within you when it's time to do something, when it's time to take action. There's nothing in you that's like, yes, let's go do that. That's so exciting. And I'm just excited to jump on the mic. I'm excited to go do that thing. If there's no spark or no sense of high energy within you when you're going to do something, that's largely a huge sign that you're uninspired. And then my last one is no imagination. And that's a huge one. And I think we often correlate imagination with being a child, but imagination is simply just allowing our mind to expand and to think creatively and to think outside the box and to just think outside the social norm. But when we have no imagination, it's really, really hard for us to seek out creativity. It's really hard for us to use that part of our brain that allows us to think of new ideas. And a large sign of feeling uninspired is that we don't really have that imagination. We're not really having new ideas flow. And so there's lots of reasons, again, why this can happen. And I do just want to preface that, again, this is totally, totally okay and very, very normal. But now that you have some of those signs that you might be feeling uninspired, I really just want to chat again about Dwayne Johnson's quote, because he says, "You're not tired, you're uninspired." And so I sat with that quote for a while and I started to just deepen the meaning of it. And then as always, I pulled out my frequency chart, something I use quite often on this podcast because I think it allows us to have an actual visual of what our vibration and our mood is. And so if you don't know what I'm referring to, our chart of frequency is basically that all of our emotions and all things that we feel operate on a certain vibrational level. And so, for example, joy and enlightenment would be very, very high on the spectrum, so 600 plus, while feeling shame and guilt and those things is pretty much as low as you can get. And so for today's episode, the two that I grabbed are that desire operates at a 125 and willingness operates at a 310. So you can see how even right there, our frequency is so different when we're feeling inspired versus not. And so the word for inspired in this context would be willingness, and desire would be when we're feeling uninspired. And so you can see there's a 200-ish difference there in our vibe overall as people when we're feeling uninspired. And so therefore it can be really, really easy to get stuck in that and live in that headspace for a really, really long time. And when we feel uninspired or in a rut, it can be really, really easy for us to get trapped there. Right? We can get trapped in those mind spaces because when we're feeling uninspired, we're often also telling ourselves negative things at the same time, right? I am bored. I am unworthy. I have no ideas. I am not creative. I am stuck. I have no ambition. I don't know what to do. I have no hobbies. Life is out to get me, right? Everyone else is so successful. Everyone else's life seems so great. And then you can see how we can really, really get stuck in that trap and stuck into that mindset trap because when we're feeling uninspired, we often take it out on ourselves. Instead of allowing that time of feeling uninspired to almost be like the hibernation phase of our brain. Because when we're in hibernation, we're basically resting and just allowing ourselves time to fuel back up, to go back for something again. And so that's why I want to preface in this episode that it is so normal and that it is so okay for that to happen. The thing is, though, is that some of us live most of our lives in an unfulfilled state. And for some of us, this ebbs and flows. Because I know some people who have really been stuck doing the same things, the same mindset, surrounded by the same people, doing the same actions their whole life. And no wonder they're feeling uninspired. Because if you're just doing the same things, looking at the same things, or surrounded by the same people, doing the same actions every single day, how is your mind supposed to have the openness to be able to bring in more awareness? And if we're so stuck in our ways and stuck in our mindset, we're not even open to allowing ourselves to be inspired, because inspiration comes from being open to receive, being open to see opportunities. And again, it's normal to have a balance. However, if you're burning yourself out and that's leading to being unfulfilled, or if you've been stuck in a rut, and just know that it's possible to change it. Because I think we often think that if we're uninspired, that means we're unsuccessful. And if we're unsuccessful, that means that that's the end for us. We think that one time in our life of having a low period means that the rest of the trajectory of our life is a failure. But that is so not true. It's about bringing awareness to it. Notice that it's happening in the first place and ask yourself questions like this. So asking yourself, how long have I been feeling this way? How long have I been feeling uninspired? How long have I been feeling in a rut? How long have I been feeling like I'm not sure where to go, right? And then secondly, are there any actions I can take that spark something within? Is there any actions that you can take today that might spark something within you? Oftentimes this comes from tapping into our inner child, doing something our inner child would have enjoyed. Finger painting, coloring something, playing with Play-Doh, playing with blocks, going outside, doing something quote unquote silly that a child would have done, but that allows that part of our brain to just flourish and be creative and think differently, right? And so the third question, have I been letting myself off the hook? Have I been getting too comfortable in my comfort zone? Because often feeling uninspired is when we're stuck in our comfort zone because we don't want to get outside of that because it's, again, uncomfortable. But if we're feeling uninspired and we're stuck in our comfort zone, those two things really do live in harmony. The only way to get inspired and to think differently and to evolve and to have new ideas is to think outside the box. It is to get outside of our comfort zone. It is to get outside of our normal things. And I was really thinking deeply about that word uninspired and really how that can dwell on our system. And I feel like being uninspired and depressed are very, very closely tied together. And often if you're feeling depressed, you are uninspired. And if you're uninspired, you're likely feeling a little depressed. Because if we're feeling uninspired or low or lost, we'll often stop doing the things we care about. And furthermore, stop doing the things we care about without intention, right? So when we feel uninspired, how many of us just throw all of our quote unquote diets out the window, our healthy eating out the window? How many of us throw out the structure of our workouts out the window, right? Caring about relationships, caring about hobbies. Because when we're feeling unfulfilled or feeling depressed, we're feeling stuck, we're feeling low, all of those things have really lost meaning. And this is something I used to see all the time when I worked with clients at a sexual assault healing center. The biggest thing that I kept seeing in all my clients was that they felt uninspired. They felt maybe stuck to go out and do something. And obviously in those situations, there's furthermore stuck trauma responses happening. But at the tip of the surface, one thing that just always jumped out from all of them was that they're uninspired, right? And that can be really hard to do when we're stuck in our head, or if we are depressed, or if we do have trauma going on, or if we do have things going on in our life, it can be really hard to break through that. But what if getting inspired is the recipe to undo all that? Because to me, feeling inspired means living your purpose. Feeling inspired means that you're living in alignment. It means you're doing things that spark joy. And what better way to heal and evolve and grow as humans than to live in our purpose, do things that spark joy, retrain our mind that there is good out there, there is possibilities, there is infinite love and things out there. But when we're uninspired and we start to feel depressed, we can really, really easily get into a slump. And that's why when I heard this quote on an inspirational video the other day, I knew that I had to come on here and share this because I also know what it's like to feel uninspired. I know what it's like to feel stuck and to feel like you have no idea where your life is going and just feel like it's so unfair. And when we're feeling that way and we're operating out of shame, we can begin to look at everybody else as better than us. And then we start to compare ourselves, which is one of the worst things that we can do. Because when we get into ruts and give up easily, but what if we ask ourselves, what if we're not depressed, or we're not tired, or we're not lazy, we're not stupid, we're not behind, we're just uninspired, and that we're just living a life that's not true to us, or maybe a life that's not true to us anymore. Because maybe you started a job, started a thing, and you had all these great ideas, and you're really excited, and then that slowly dwindled away. Knowing that that is okay, because if we're feeling uninspired or feeling stuck, that could also be a sign that you've grown. Because if things are beginning to feel boring or beginning to not spark joy or not have that fire lit within you, it could just mean that it's not in alignment anymore. And so that is a big indicator and a big red flag that it's time to pivot that. It's no longer serving you. And so for me at that job, I should have gone to my manager and expressed how I was feeling. But instead, I just allowed myself to push through it because I felt like I had to. And then I was going through my whole workday feeling miserable, going home feeling miserable, and then wondering why I was feeling so depressed in my life. And so I have a couple tangible things that I want to encourage you guys to do to intervene with this, to begin to shift that. Because the thing about feeling uninspired or depressed or stuck is that we will stay there until we cognitively have the awareness and the ability to begin to shift that. But if we don't shift that, we will likely stay there for the rest of our lives. So it's about bringing awareness to it. And so I'm going to dive into a couple exercises with you guys that have helped me big time with beginning to just find that spark again, find that sense of fulfillment again in your life. And so the first exercise that I have for you guys is one that is not mine. It was one that was taught to me during my first round of group coaching a year ago with Next Level University. And so basically what was taught to us, and this was actually on my one-on-one with Alan at the end of group coaching, and he got me to, I want you to envision a piece of white paper. And I want you to write your name in the middle of the white paper. And you can physically do this or you can do this in your mind. I definitely encourage you to do it on paper when you have time, but just for the context of understanding where I'm coming from, I just want you to envision a piece of white paper with your name in the middle with a circle around your name. And then I want you to start to draw lines away from that circle, almost like you're drawing a big sun. And out of all those points, I want you to write down all the things in your life that you identify with. So for me, that would be my podcast, that would be Meraki, that would be relationships, that would be my family, that would be my 9 to 5, that would be Bailey, my dog, right? I enjoy thrift shopping, I enjoy organizing, right? So you're writing down all the things about your life. And then what I want you to do is I want you to ask what you're pouring into those and what you're getting out of them. So let's say I'm pouring an 8 into my podcast and I'm getting a 10 in return. That would mean I'm getting a +2 of fulfillment. But let's say, for example, your job, you're pouring in a 10 and you're getting out a 2. That's a -8. That's a -8 difference of unfulfillment. And so when we're able to do that exercise and we're able to see the things around us that are causing those negatives, and again, it's about watching the numbers, a lower number, a higher number. Will it ebb and flow? Could we pour in more energy to the things that are bringing us fulfillment and less energy into the things that are bringing us less fulfillment, right? And so we can really see there how our cups begin to be depleted and we start to feel tired and resentful and exhausted. And that's because we're pouring energy into the things in our life that aren't bringing us anything in return. And I think that we're also guilty of that. And I still have the exercise that I did a year ago to reflect back on, because I was realizing so many areas of my life that I was pouring in a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, and I was getting a 1, a 2, a 3 in return. And so at that time, I had left my job, I had moved across the country, I had left a relationship, I had left friendships, because none of those things were bringing me anything in return. They weren't giving me any sense of purpose or fulfillment or love or joy or spark or anything in that area. And so I knew something needed to shift. But this is a great exercise to do by yourself, to get raw and honest and to just see those things laid out right in front of you. Because you might not even be realizing how much energy you're pouring into something and how much you're getting out, or vice versa. And it might also be able to see that there's great things in your life being poured in that maybe you can invest more time into. And if you're noticing things that are completely unaligned or completely off balance, how can we begin to slowly remove those out of your life to begin to open up room for new things to flow in? And so that was the first exercise I had for you guys. And then a couple of other things is just to begin to place boundaries, to begin to just say no to the things that aren't sparking joy. If you're going to things and saying yes to events and yes to these things and they're bringing you nothing in return, or you really don't want to go and the whole time you're there, you don't want to be there, or you're having a conversation with someone and the whole time you just want the conversation to end, knowing that that's taking a toll and a hit on your mental health and on your self-esteem, on your well-being, and on your level of feeling inspired. And so putting in boundaries is a great way that we're able to begin that process for ourselves, that we're able to hold ourselves accountable of saying no to the things that aren't in alignment. Because again, when we're feeling uninspired, it's often because we're living a life that isn't in alignment, and it's time to shift and pivot. The second one is one that I recommend hugely after doing the exercise that I had just mentioned, and that's to take time to process without coping or distracting. And so if you're getting home from work and you're sitting on the couch and you're pouring a glass of wine and you're just watching Netflix, I encourage you to turn the TV off, put the wine away, and just sit with yourself. Ask yourself how you're feeling. Close your eyes. How am I feeling? What am I needing? Have I felt like this for a long time? What is one small thing I can do right now? And it often is some form of self-care. doing something for ourselves that sparks joy. And that doesn't necessarily just mean taking a bubble bath or reading a book. That could be, but it's likely something deeper that you can do to pour self-love into yourself. And so taking time to process, and this isn't just going to happen in one day. You could get some ideas, but allow yourself to just turn off the distractions and allow yourself to just sit with the uncomfortability for a while, because it's often telling you that for a reason. The next point that I have is to begin to get outside your comfort zone. Because as I mentioned earlier, we cannot get inspired inside of our comfort zone. We know it too well. That's why it's called a comfort zone, is because we're comfortable there. How are you supposed to get inspired if you're too comfortable? How are you supposed to begin to take action if you feel too safe and too comfortable? Right? And so I encourage you to find little ways to begin to get outside your comfort zone. And I encourage you to do this after you've taken time to sit with yourself. There's some rhyme or reason to the order of this, right? Beginning with that exercise, setting some boundaries, taking time to process, and begin to get outside your comfort zone. And next, I would encourage you to surround yourself with people who are inspiring. And in retrospect, listening to this podcast is exactly that. For me, that's listening to positive affirmations in the morning, listening to those motivational speeches, right? If you don't actually have those people in your life that you can identify as being inspiring, seek them. Seek them through books, seek them through videos, seek them through music. There are so many people living their purpose, living a life of alignment and in joy and in fulfillment, and who are inspiring. And if we're able to plug that into our brain will begin to look for more of that for your own unique life. And so we often think that we have to have all these resources attainable to us, but it's about getting resourceful, because there's so many things out there. And just by rewiring your brain to listen to things, your brain will begin to get inspired. Hence the name of my podcast, Rewired to Inspire, right? That is what it's about. It's about retraining those things that we're telling ourselves, getting out of those ruts so that we're able to pivot our life in a different direction. And so in conclusion, I just want to again preface that if you're not inspired, it's likely because you're not living a life of alignment. And alignment often comes after hard times. And so I wanted to end today's episode with sharing a little story about leaving my last job before I moved back to my hometown. And so I was working again at a sexual assault healing center, and I was working as a phase 1 counselor with folks. And as much as I absolutely loved my job, like loved my job, I learned so much. I had great coworkers. I've learned more about the brain and the body and trauma than most people will in their whole lifetime. And I got to meet some freaking amazing clients and people and just watch them go through the journey. And it was just such a beautiful, rewarding, amazing job. But it was also one of the hardest jobs of my life. And I still sometimes get flashbacks where I think about my clients or I hold on to things. And that's exactly why it was detrimental to me, is because I wasn't able to separate the two, because I just cared so much about the people that I was speaking with. But at that time, slowly over time, I was beginning to feel uninspired and unaligned because I was walking away from my true self. I was beginning to allow my work to consume me, consume my mental health, consume my well-being. And so I lost touch with myself. And so eventually, after time went on, because I wasn't able to catch it, I did have to step away from that job. But so in doing that, and when I left that job and when I moved across the country and back to my hometown and I get out of my comfort zone and I sat with myself, that is when my podcast was surfaced. And so I just want to use myself as an example that I know what it's like to be at a complete 0 and as close to 100 as you can get. I know what it's like to be on both sides of that, but again, normalizing that it's okay to ebb and flow through the journey. There are weeks when I feel very uninspired and I get into a rut, and that's when I need to also ask myself, am I eating properly? Am I taking care of myself? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I taking enough time to tend to myself? Have I poured into my cups, right? It's asking yourself those questions every single day, because when we are able to bring awareness to them every single day, they don't pile up as much. Because when we allow things to just pile up and we suppress it and we pretend like it's not happening, or we pretend to fight through because it's a paycheck or it's a friendship or it's a whatever, knowing that will eventually catch up to you. Knowing that will eventually begin to eat away at you, and it will just get stronger. And so when we're able to ask ourselves some of these questions every single day, we're able to get ahead of it. But if you have been feeling overall just uninspired in your life and just feeling stuck and like you're doing the same things and you don't really know where to go, I definitely encourage you to do those exercises. And I do just want to, as always, thank you for doing the work. Because anytime I share any of these things and you guys are actively going out and doing them, that is just, you have such a high level of my respect when I hear that happens, or just knowing in my heart that you guys are doing the work, because you're not doing the work for me or for anybody else but yourself. And that's what makes it beautiful, because you get to choose every single day. Everything that you do is a choice. And if you're choosing to use your energy to better yourself, or to evolve, or to level up, or to get inspired, or to live an aligned life, knowing that that's more rare than you might think, and more rare than I ever even realized. And so I just want you to pat yourself on the back and thank yourself for doing that, because it truly is genuinely rare to do the work. But I want you to be able to reflect back, to rewire your brain, to get inspired, to live a life of alignment, to live your purpose, and to just live the best life that you're able to live, because that is what we're all here for. And that is why I was so passionate to come on here and share this with you all. And I definitely encourage you, if you've never listened to any of Dwayne Johnson's speeches, to listen to them, because they are just so beautiful. In my last episode was all about Steve Jobs' speech, right? When we're able to get around those people and surround ourselves with like-minded people, or just people that we aspire to be, that is how we grow, because our mind is able to see that if it's possible for them, it's possible for us. And know that it's so possible for you. So good work. I'm so proud of you. I truly hope that this sparks something within you to go and just get more personal with yourself. Get to know yourself better. Find those things that spark joy and try to do them often, because that is how we will begin to get inspired and live a life of alignment and a life true to you. I want to thank you guys so much, as always, from the bottom of my heart, for tuning in to episode 52 of Rewire to Inspire. That is so fun to say that we are in the 50s. So exciting. I am just have so much love in my heart that I just want to pour into all of you guys. So thank you guys all so much, as always, and I look forward to chatting with you next episode. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at JessieBrown13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.